at the end of the conversations. And welcome to this exciting session today where we talk with William Dalrymple. His Twitter bio describes him as a historian, art historian, photographer, Mehrauli goat herd, kabutarbaz, and badfarosh. Writes the occasional book. His occasional writing has led to an impressive repertoire of 12 books ranging from travelogues to historical narratives, articles, and a variety of curating projects. He moved to Delhi in 1989, where lived and researched for his second book, City of Jinns, which went on to win the Thomas Cook Travel Book Award in 1994, and the Sunday Times Young British Writer of the Year Award that same year. Over the years, he has been awarded with many prestigious laurels and honorary doctorate of letters. He is a fellow of the Royal Society of Literature, the Royal Geographical Society, and of the Royal Asiatic Society, and is a founder and co-director of the Jaipur Literature Festival. Delhi so bewitched him that he made it his second home and set up residence with his family in a farmhouse in Mehrauli. William's writings of India's past is a mesmerizing blend of facts and imageries that sets his books apart from others in the genre. He made history readable, if I may say so. So today we are going to take a look at Delhi through the eyes of William Dalrymple. William, welcome to our conversation.
Thank you, Loveleen. Thank you for having me, and thank you all for listening. I'm amazed that as many people have turned up as have.
Yeah, so
the benefit of a hot afternoon in lockdown.
Yes, that's true. Everybody's zooming in, and webinars, this is the new normal. So we'll start with Delhi, our questions on Delhi at the first. Since you've written the City of Jinns, there's been a drastic change in the topography and culture of Delhi. Does Delhi still remain your favorite city? And what fascinates you the most about it?
I don't know if it remains my favorite city. There are other places I'd like to go for holidays. I mean, the world is full of, pretty tourist towns that it's lovely to spend a week in. But it's certainly the place I have chosen to make my life and the one I love living in. You're right, the city I live in now is very different from the city I moved to in 1989. Delhi has moved from being, about 1 million people to being, well, if you look from space and count Gurgaon, Noida, and the greater capital region, it's 26 million. It's the second biggest urban space in the world after Greater Tokyo. And there are many negative things that have got worse, most notably the air quality and the pollution. The roads, which used to be startlingly empty and are now sort of jammed, or not today, but until lockdown used to be jammed to breaking point. There are many positive aspects too, though, and Delhi haters, I think, often overlook the many positive things. Everything I loved about Delhi is still there. You can still go to the Jama Masjid and see the kebab sellers outside and the storytellers and the old Sufis wandering around the old city. You can still go and explore Nizamuddin, Kabutarbaz, all that wonderful old Delhi world is still intact. It hasn't gone. With the difference that now Delhi, rather than being a kind of Sarkari Punjabi city full of refugees from 1947 and where everyone had a government job, it's now a megalopolis with, it's the one place in India where you can see all of India. There are areas of Humayunpur where you can find Tibetans and Nagas and people from Imphal and so on. There are other areas where, Siar Park is full of Bengalis. There are other bits which are little Tamil Nads or little Goas or little Keralas and that's not true of Calcutta. Calcutta really has just got Bengalis, much as I love Bengalis. Mumbai is a mixture of Mumbaikas and Biharis, but Delhi actually genuinely is like the New York of India, and like New York, it has a buzzing literary scene, which is obviously lovely for me. There's book events every week in the season, every day sometimes. There is good cinemas now. There are delicatessens one couldn't have dreamt of in 1989 that have, you can get, I don't know, trendy buckwheat for your diet, which is what I was looking for this week. Feta, halloumi, whatever.
Sourdough bread.
Yeah, exactly, all that stuff. Opera, you can go and get croissants as good as you can get in Paris. And none of that was there in 89, particularly the croissant. I remember terrible croissants at the Taj Hotel. You used to pay, even then, a fortune for a terrible croissant. So I mean, it's still got at the heart its character. And yet it's also now a big international city with a big buzzing metropolitan vibe, which it didn't have then. So I'm not planning to leave. I love it. And, I mean, which is not to say, and I should say this straight up, that there are not a million things about Delhi that one would like to change. It's attitude to women, it's aggression, it's road rage, particularly the pollution and the smog. But I can say that I'm never bored. It's still every day something weird happens that makes me think again about the city I thought I knew. Still, I'm finding monuments or museums or lovely Havelis that I've never seen, even though I've been trawling around the alleys of this place for 30 years now. And in the National Archives, there are the materials for all my books. So in all these ways, it's a lovely place to. And I'm sitting here in a farmhouse. I've got a beautiful Amultas tree in full bloom outside.
Oh, beautiful!
I have no complaints, really. I know you're going to ask me about the lockdown in a second, but I've had a very blissful lockdown sitting here. To be honest, I hate to say that when there's a million migrant workers trudging around the roads, avoiding COVID, people have lost their jobs, and the economy is dire. But in my little micro world, things are okay, actually.
Yeah. A story about Delhi, its past or present, that has moved you the most, William. Would you like to tell us?
Well, I mean, the story I've just written in my most recent book, The Anarchy, is the story of Shah Alam, who's one of these forgotten Mughals. Everyone knows about Akbar, good, Aurangzeb, bad, and Shah Jahan and the Taj and everything. But everyone always forgets the later Mughals, and I've spent quite a lot of the last 20 years writing them up, particularly Bahadur Shah Zafar, who was the subject of my book, The Last Mughal. And more recently, Shah Alam, who is an amazing character. He's a brave, brilliant man who, like his grandson Zafar, sadly, suffered his tribulations in old age when he was no longer able to sort of defend himself. He was a great poet. He was a man who very much created and Meroli, place I live. His patronage of the Sufi shrine of Qutbuddin was the great Sufi of Meroli. Qutb Sahib was the beginning of this brief moment when Delhi was like the kind of Hamptons of Delhi. And just as New Yorkers fly off and jam the roads to go and spend their summers in the Hamptons, so in Delhi, the monsoons were spent in Meroli, amid the mango orchards and the Jarna, the waterfalls. And I mean, now, of course, Meroli is not necessarily where you want to spend your summer holidays or the monsoon, but the mango trees have been cut down, the waterfall no longer runs, but and the swings with the courtesans of the old city from beside the Jama Masjid, that's all. I mean, all that world is obviously completely gone. But it's still the most fascinating area of Delhi, Meroli with all its ruins, and then in the middle of it, Olive's restaurant, where you can get the best cocktails and the best food. So
absolutely. So which Delhi would have been more fabulous, the one under the Lodhis or the one built by the Mughals?
Well, much as I love the Lodi Gardens and the Lodi tombs, the Lodi period was a low point in the history of Delhi. there are two periods when, two periods from the Indo-Islamic period. Well, I mean, let's go through it. There are many great periods. Okay, obviously, we start with Indraprastha. We start with the Mahabharata, when Delhi, in the form of Indraprastha, was the envy, the envious capital that made the Kauravas hate their cousins in envy and jealousy. And there seems to be some archaeological evidence that it was, by the standards of the 4th or 5th century BC, was a rather amazing place, the levels under Brahma. Then the next time, it remained a very provincial place throughout the Rajput period. Archaeologists seem to think that the period of Prithviraj was not as glorious as certainly the epic makes out. It is the work of a poet, and the real capital for the Chauhans was Ajmer, and Delhi was a provincial center. But then, under the Sultans, the early Sultans, Delhi did become the center of an empire which stretched all the way down to Madurai, and was filled with rather like 1948 when it was filled with the refugees from partition. In the 13th century, it was filled with all the refugees from Genghis Khan. So all the professors from Baghdad and the great poets and a lot, as well as obviously presumably millions of penniless people looking for shelter from the Mongols. There was also all the intellectuals and artists who'd fled the Mongols' path, because Delhi was the one city that resisted the Mongols. The hydraulics of Tughlaqabad, which you can still see when you go down the road, they were able to pull the sluices and flood the plains around Tughlaqabad, which meant that the Mongol army couldn't get there. Cavalry got swept away. So Delhi resisted the Mongols, and that was a great period. That's the century before the Lodis. The Lodis was a time of decline. The Lodis spent their lives battling with their rivals in a place called Jaunpur, which doesn't even, very few people know. It's outside Varanasi in UP today. Yes. And it's a miserable place, really. But I mean, the Lodis' big, achievement was to conquer Jaunpur. It's a measure of how modest their regime was. And then, of course, under Shah Jahan, it again becomes the center of India. And Shah Jahanabad is built. And it's a spectacular city. And it is the largest city in the world. Quite simple. And it remains the largest city in the world right through till Nadir Shah's time, until 1739. And during that time, there are more than 1 million inhabitants. It contains all the wealth gathered, looted, or brought from the rest of India. Jesuit priests left records of it as this incredibly rich place where craftsmen, ultra-skilled craftsmen, could make anything that you wanted. And it was a world city that you had to go to find something even remotely comparable westwards. You had to travel as far as Istanbul, and eastwards you had to travel as far as Edo, which was where Tokyo is. And Delhi, between those two poles, was the grandest, richest, most spectacular city of all. And images that we have from that period show the Chandni Chowk today, of course, rather a grubby spot. Chandni Chowk is as sort of, the equal of Rue Faubourg in Paris, or Madison Avenue in New York, or Bond Street, slightly tacky, but anyway, so whatever smart area of London you like to.
You've forgotten your own.
I can't hardly.
Okay.
I'm a Scot. I'm not London.
Yes.
But Princes Street for Edinburgh.
Princes Street. Yeah, well said.
But So those were the great periods of Delhi's might and glory. And who knows what lies ahead in the future? We can tackle the pollution and the traffic and get a slightly better government. And,
yeah, true.
I'm an optimist for Delhi and for India. I think that despite a government I don't like at all at the moment, and despite the pollution and the traffic and so on, I think Delhi has a great future, and I think India has a great future. I think that India is going to have to screw up magnificently not to be one of the big two powers, or one of the big three powers left at the end of this century. I mean,
I like that.
It's possible for India to screw up. We know how.
I like the optimism, William.
But I mean, everything is going for India.
Yes.
And so, although obviously we're in very troubled times at the moment, the economy is shot. It was pretty shot before the lockdown, but it is now completely shot. And the urban underclass has been jettisoned by the government and forgotten during the lockdown. And those images of all those people stranded and unable to get back to Bihar or UP, wherever they come from, it's a terrible moment in Delhi's history. But in the long term, in the medium term and the long term, I think Delhi is a great city, and I think it's a fantastic place to live, and it's a very fantastic place to work.
Yeah, I think we are a very resilient people, and I think and there's a lot of work that private individuals are doing to that effect, and we will bounce back, I'm sure.
Yeah. No, I mean, as always with this country, when things are most dire, you see, real quality, and people like Aditya Ghosh, who founded Indigo, and started an amazing charity to feed the poor, and there's lots of people out there like that who work that all the different NGOs have done.
Yes, there's a lot of work going on. Coming back to your book, The City of Gents and Delhi.
That was a while ago, that book.
That was a while back.
I'm now 54, so I think it's 30 years probably this year.
Yeah. So do you have the book handy? Would you mind reading your favorite part to us, or maybe talking about it to us?
Yeah. Staring into a bookshelf. Sorry, I should have had a copy ready and sitting by my. I didn't study your questions carefully enough.
Not a problem.
I'll read you a little bit from visiting. Ironically, this is a passage about Karachi, but about visiting two old Delhi wallahs who left or evicted from Delhi in 1947, remembering the Delhi they'd lost. And the main protagonist is this guy, Ahmed Ali, who was the author of Twilight in Delhi. This will take a couple of minutes. If you don't mind me reading it. It's a couple of pages.
Please, go ahead. We have plenty of time.
Ahmed Ali was there to meet us. He wore severe black-rimmed glasses, above which sprouted a pair of thin grey eyebrows. He slurred his consonants and had the slightly limp wrist and effete manner of one who modelled himself on a Bloomsbury original. His hair was the colour of wood ash. For a man once seen as a champion of Delhi's culture, a bulwark of Eastern civilization against the seepage of Western influence, Ahmed Ali now cut an unexpectedly English figure. With his clipped accent and tweed jacket and old leather elbow patches, he could have passed off successfully as a clubland character from a Noel Coward play. But despite his comfortable, well-to-do appearance, Ahmed Ali was an angry man. Over the hours I spent with him, he spluttered and spat like a well-warmed frying pan. The first occasion was when I inadvertently mentioned that he was now a citizen of Pakistan. Pakistan? Poppycock, balderdash, he said. I was always against Jinnah, never had any interest in Pakistan. Steady on, said his friend, Shah. The devil, said Ali. Pakistan's not a country, never was. It's a damned hodgepodge. It's not your country or my country, he was shouting at Shah. It's the country of a damn bunch of feudal lords, robbers, bloody murderers, kidnappers. The outburst spluttered out into silence. But I ventured, didn't you opt for Pakistan? Surely you could have stayed in Delhi if you wanted to. There was another explosion. I opted for Pakistan, I did not. I was a visiting professor in Nanking when the blasted partition took place. The bloody swine wouldn't let me come back home, so what do you mean? I went and saw the Indian ambassador in Peking. Bloody swine said I couldn't return. Said it was a question of Hindu against Muslim and there was nothing he could do. I was caught in China and had nowhere to go. Careful, said Charnel Hack, seeing the state his friend had worked himself up into. So how did you end up in Karachi? When my salary in Nanking was stopped, I found my way to some friends in Hong Kong. They put me on an amphibious plane to Karachi. Where else could I have gone if I could not go back to Delhi? Ali had ceased to quiver with rage and was now merely very cross. I never opted for Pakistan, he said, gradually regaining his poise. The civilization I belong to, the civilization of Delhi, came into being through the mingling of two different cultures, Hindu and Muslim. That civilization flourished for 1,000 years undisturbed until certain people came along and denied that that great mingling had taken place. Views like that can hardly have made you very popular here, I suppose. They never accepted me in Pakistan, damn it. They've weeded me out. They've published my books. They've deleted my name. When copies of Twilight in Delhi arrived at the Karachi customs from India, they sent them back. Said the book was about the forbidden city across the border. They implied the culture was foreign and subversive. In that case, I said, couldn't you go back to Delhi? Couldn't you reapply for Indian citizenship? Now no country is my country, said Ali. Delhi is dead. The city that was, the language, the culture, everything I knew is finished. It's true, said Charnel Hack. I went back 13 years after partition. Already everything was very different. Before partition, it was a unique city, said Ali. Although it was already very poor, still it preserved its high culture. That high culture filtered down to the streets. Everyone was part of it. Even the milkmen could sing Mir and Dagh. The prostitutes would sing Persian songs and recite Hafiz. They may not have been able to read and write, but they could remember the poets and the language, said Charnel. You cannot conceive how chaste Delhi Urdu was. And how rich, said Ali. Every mahalla had its own expression. The language used by our ladies was quite distinct from that used by our men. Now the language has shrunk. So many words are lost. We talked for an hour about the Delhi of their childhood and youth. We talked of the eunuchs and the Sufis and the pigeons and the poets. The monsoon picnics in Maruli and the jinn who fell in love with Ahmad Ali's aunt. We talked of the sweetmeat shops that stayed open until 3 in the morning. The sorcerers who could cast spells over a whole mahalla, the possessed women who used to run vertically up the Zanana walls, and the miraculous cures effected by Hakim Ajmal Khan. The old men swam together through great oceans of nostalgia, before finally coming ashore on a strand of melancholy. But all of this is no more, said Ali. All that made Delhi special has been uprooted and dispersed. Now it is a carcass without a soul, said Charnel. I am a fossil, said Ali, and Charnel Hack is on his way to becoming it. But nevertheless, I insisted, if you both love Delhi so much, wouldn't you like to see it one more time? I will never see that town again, said Ali. Once I was invited to give some lectures in Australia. There was a mechanical fault and the plane was diverted to Delhi. The plane landed, but I refused to get out. I said, I'm not getting out. I don't have to. You call your damn chairman, but I'm not putting one foot on that soil which was sacred to me and now has been desecrated. They got the entire staff of the airport there to get me out, but I didn't move. How could I? How could I revisit that which once was mine and now was no longer mine? When they asked why I was behaving as I was, I simply sat in my seat and quoted Mir Taki Mir at them. What matters it, O breeze, if now has come the spring, when I have lost them both, the garden and my net? What happened, I asked. The swine were all Punjabis, said Ali. Tell you the truth, I don't think they understood a bloody word that I said.
Oh, fascinating. I love the characters in the book, William. There's so many brilliant characters in the book.
So many are dead now, I am sad to say. I mean, Ahmed Ali is no longer alive. Charnel Haki is dead. Dr. Jaffrey is dead. Mrs. Puri is dead. So it's a record of a lost world. It's a very odd thing if you are a middle-aged travel writer and you start young, in that you suddenly find that your books, which were contemporary records of a place 30 years ago, suddenly become sort of archaeological artifacts by the time you're 50.
Yeah. Talking of Dr. Jaffrey, one of your characters from the book, I have a question related to that. So Meetings with Remarkable Muslims is a lesser known travel book edited by Barnaby Rogerson and Rose Baring. You have a short story in this, which is an adaptation of Dr. Jaffrey's character from The City of Jinns. In this story, you're taken in by the liberal and inclusive views of the practicing Muslims in Old Delhi. You would have encountered many such characters, I mean, during your travels and research on Delhi then and now, and you named a few just now. Is there a difference now in people that you see?
Well, I mean, those people are still there. I mean, Dr. Jaffrey himself is dead, but other people like him are still up there. There are still calligraphers in the old city practicing away. You know, if you look a little bit behind the surface, you find all that. Well, and of course, the cooking. You still go and get astonishing Delhi food in the alleys of the old city, and food that changes with the season. So the food, you know, when Eid comes, you have a whole set of sweets that aren't made at the rest of the year. Ditto the monsoon. Ditto the winter. Suddenly, it's high summer. The Jaljeera is out on the streets, and so all that sort of world is still there. Are attitudes different to Muslims? Of course they. And you know, we are all aware of the divisions in this country now, which were always there, but which definitely exacerbated at the moment, sadly. I mean, this has come and gone throughout Indian history. I'm not a believer that history, you know, that there was an Nehruvian image created after independence by well-meaning historians who, in order to heal the wounds of partition, created a very rose-tinted version of Hindu-Muslim history in India. The reality is that there have been periods of great violence in both directions. There have been destruction of temples. There have also been moments when populations have come together, shared the same sacred spaces, shared myths. Indians, Muslims embraced the Dussehra and Diwali and Holi. Indian Hindus went to Sufi shrines and loved qawwalis, and the Kayas would go to madrasas and educate their children in Persian. So, you know, people like Ram Mohan Roy, who are today regarded as great Hindu heroes, were in fact madrasa trained and did their Bismillah and were fluent in Persian, which they then used as their job as secretaries to the Mughals and other courts. So there is a whole syncretic world out there. But as today, there are moments when everyone gets together and it's okay, and there are other moments when things get nasty. And that, I think, has been the case since the 13th century.
Yeah, and also I was reading an article that you wrote in 2015 on Tipu Sultan, this syncretic character, and he is a controversial character, but an interesting one nonetheless. And what you said just now kind of echoes in that article.
I've written more about him in my latest book, The Anarchy, and he's a very interesting character because within his lands, he was a model monarch. When you go to Sri Rangapatnam today, there is a Hindu temple there, dating from going way back, I think, to the 8th or 9th century, but the body of the buildings there at the moment of 16th century Vijayanagara. Now, there is not one defaced sculpture in that temple. And it was in the center of Tipu's kingdom. If you travel around the amazing Hoysala temples that are all over that region, you find that many of them display what they call Padshah lingams, which were lingams given to them by Tipu Sultan. However, if you go a little bit to the south and go to talk to the Syrian Christians or to the Kurgis, the Kodavas, or to any Malus really, or people of Mangalore, they all have bitter memories of Tipu as an enemy. Tipu at war was a terrible thing. He used to circumcise and convert by force his captives. He would destroy anything in his way, churches, temples. He was definitely not someone you wanted to get on the wrong side of. So, you know, India has a great love of very black and white images of its history. Akbar is good, Aurangzeb is bad. Tipu doesn't fit into that in any way. He would have been a very good ruler. He was innovative. He founded, for example, a state trading company to take on the East India Company. He imported silk, sericulture from China. In many ways, he was unquestionably, not in many ways, unquestionably, he was the single most effective opponent of the East Indies. He was the very, very effective opponent of the East India Company, and the one they really feared. At Battle of Pollilore, he defeated them, and did far more to put the companies back against the wall than any other ruler of that period, including the Marathas,
Right.
although the Marathas also put up a very good fight.
Yeah.
And so he's a complicated figure, and just says, he isn't black and white like many people in history and many people in politics today. He's a complicated character.
So, William, a lot of your work has reflected how different religions in India are socially and culturally intertwined. There are some remarkable stories in 9 Lives. You were here for the first time when you were probably barely 19 years old, and since then you visited India several times.
I arrived at 18, not 19.
Okay. So you have basically 30 years of knowing India. What would be your opinion on the socio-cultural intertwinement of different Indian religions now? Has it changed, would you say, for the better or worse?
I think if you go to the villages, you still find what you've always seen. You'll find Muslims going to temples or to banyans to, when they need an exam or something, they'll tie a little thread. When you'll find Hindus going to Sufi shrines, all that still exists. In the cities, however, there's definitely been a polarization. And things very bad in Delhi in particular. I don't need to tell anyone watching here what happened in the period before the lockdown. There was very, very bad riots in Delhi at the beginning of this year. And things got very bad. But I think, India has this fantastic capacity to come back from catastrophe. And just when one thinks everything is falling to pieces, something wonderful happens. It's a country with great resilience, and great capacity for bouncing back.
Now, we all know that Indians love to share their stories and talk, especially to an Englishman. I'm sure they would have opened up like
I'm not an Englishman. I mean, wash your mouth out. I'm a Scotsman, please.
Scottish, I'm so sorry.
I'm going to start calling you a Pakistani or a Bangladeshi or an Afghan in a minute.
To a Scotsman. So is there an interesting anecdote you'd like to share about your encounters?
Well, I mean, the whole of my life work, in a sense, has been a whole long series of anecdotes about my encounters. To choose one, what would I choose? Well, I mean, 9 Lives is, in a sense, my most recent travel book, although it's now 8 years old. And in that, there are extraordinary encounters. Just to give you an example of the sort of thing I'm writing about, I write about a wonderful man called Hari Das, who is a Dalit prison warder for 9 months of the year, for 10 months of the year. Then for 2 months of the year, he's a god. And this is because he's a Tayam dancer, and he incarnates the deities of Kerala through his dancing and in his costumes. And while for most of the year, in the very conservative society of rural North Kerala, he's not allowed into Brahmin houses, for 2 months a year, he is a celebrity, and people queue to touch his feet. I had a wonderful time. The story in 9 Lives was my first encounter with him. I then made the mistake of taking my young children to see him perform the following year, and he was incarnating some particularly excitable deity that day and bit the head off a chicken in front of them. Nearly.
So this is the Thayyam dancer, for audiences who don't know. He's the Thayyam dancer from North Kerala.
Correct, from Kannur. Sorry, I thought I'd said that. And then we took him on tour, and we went all around 9 Lives. I took a lot of people I'd written about with me on the tour, and we had them at the Opera House. We had him. We had some Sufis from Sindh who sang the poetry of Shah Abdul Latif. We had Sushila Rahman, who was singing Tabaram hymns from Tanjavur, and so on and so forth. And it was wonderful. We had this sort of whole bus full of crazies, who we took around. It was a wonderful few months.
So you filled a very important gap in Indian writing with regards to nonfiction. Did you face challenges and criticism from fellow writers for
No, I mean,
any
I've
reason?
been extremely lucky in that when I arrived in India, Indian fiction was world-beating. Amitav Ghosh, Salman Rushdie, Vikram
Yes.
Seth, these were, these were and are some of the world's very greatest living novelists. But while you were finding Indian writers every year on the Booker shortlist, I should mention also Aravind Adiga and Kiran Desai and Arundhati Roy. There's this extraordinary first 11 of Indian fiction, which would have beaten any team out there. But there was not an equivalent team or any sort of team at all, really, in nonfiction. And there was no one writing prize-winning biography or very, very little narrative history. India has a very remarkable historiographical tradition with some amazing historians like Irfan Habib and Ram Thapa and so on. But they tended to be at that period of the left, and the left doesn't do biography. The left believes everything is about economic and social. The far left believes everything is about economic and social forces, invisible but controlling all our lives. And therefore, the kind of history that people actually like to read, which is stories about human beings, with history with people in it, was not being written. Recently, Sunil Kulnani put it very nicely. He said, the Indian past is a curiously unpeopled place. I have been very lucky in that I was able to write history here with very little competition in the kind of books I was writing. It's now changing. There are wonderful writers like Aravind Koti or Manu Pillai coming up who are spectacular writers, and I'm sure will go on to win the great non-fiction prizes. But for 20 years, I kind of bizarrely had the non-fiction field in my period to myself. I mean, there were people like Ram Guha writing brilliantly on the modern period, the post-independence India. But really, there was no one writing the kind of books I was writing at all for 20 years. And I built my career, I suppose, in that space.
Yeah, fascinating. And now you're kind of moving, you're writing a little bit towards art as well, and you curated an exhibition across the world, the latest one being at the Wallace Collection in London on Forgotten Masters, Indian paintings for the East India Company.
Extended for another 2-3 months, which is wonderful. And
so
then
what sparked this interest in art? Sorry.
I've always been interested in art. At Cambridge, I studied both history and art history.
Okay.
So I'm a trained art historian, and it's always been the other half of one of the things that's always drawn me to history is the art, and vice versa. So it's not something new. And I curated another show in New York at the Age Society of late Mughal art 10 years ago. So this is something which I've been longing to do, and finally had the offer to and the resources to put on this show. But my current project is a very different one that I've been working under lockdown, if I can say. I've just finished with The Anarchy, the last of a series of 4 books, The Company Quartet, which is a history of the period between the end of the Mughals, between the death of Aurangzeb and the 1857 uprising, the great uprising called in Britain the Sepoy Mutiny, and in India known as the First War of Independence. And those 4 books are White Mughals. The first book, I suppose, chronologically, is The Anarchy, which tells about the opening of the company and the fall of the great Mughals. Second one is The White Mughals. Third one is Return of the King, about the East India Company's expedition to Afghanistan, disastrous. And the fourth is The Last Mughal.
The Last Mughal.
So that now they're going to be produced in a box set next year as the Company Quartet, and in a sense that's 20 years work, boxed, wrapped, completed. And my next project is to go back to a period of history I've never written about, but I'm fascinated by, which is the early period, the sort of Gupta period, when India was diffusing its culture and art and philosophy and its religions out over the whole of Asia. It was an incredibly a remarkable period. So there's three parts of the book. The first is the story of how Buddhism traveled north through Pakistan and Afghanistan to those are the countries there today, to China. And it became the state religion in China under the Empress Wu Zetian. Then there is part two, which is the whole story of how Hindu culture traveled to Southeast Asia and how the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, and everything became epics which every person from Sri Lanka through to Indonesia was familiar with. Java, Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, all these countries, Malaysia, all these countries have the Hindu epics, and for 1,000 years they had Sanskrit, although that's slightly lost now. And then the final part is the story of how Indian mathematics and astronomy traveled westwards, first to Baghdad, and from there on into Renaissance Europe, where, I know everyone's always aware of this, that the numbering system, the numeral system we have today, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in front of me in the keyboard here, is first, the ancestor of that is first invented by Ashoka, the Brahmi script.
Yes.
And it then adapts itself and moves to become the Arabic numerals, and then from there, Fibonacci, the Fibonacci sequence. Fibonacci grew up in what's now Algeria on a Pisan trading post and learnt Arabic as a child, and he was the one that brought both Indian numerals and the place value system, which noughts, tens, hundreds, thousands, the decimal system. That whole system is moved to Europe very late in the 15th century, 1,500 years after people have been using it here. So anyway, that's the next thing, and so slightly different.
Fascinating.
A different world from the Mughals, and I'm loving, because it's stuff I've been interested in but never actually studied. So I've spent the lockdown deep in Gupta, India, having a long time.
Yeah. I studied ancient Indian history, and this was my favorite period as well. So fascinating.
Teach me about this. I'm still right at the beginning.
Not that kind of research. Okay, so coming to Bengal now. So what are your connections to Bengal and Virginia Woolf?
So I'm technically Anglo-Indian. I've got a great-grandmother from Chandanag. And maybe that's why I'm so garrulous and sort of pseudo-intellectual. My Bengali bit of me. I didn't know any of this when I arrived in India for the first time. I didn't know any of it. I found it during the research for White Moguls. There was this woman called Marie Monica, who we only know her name she took when she converted to Catholicism. She was presumably a Bengali Hindu, I don't know what caste, married a Frenchman, and their daughter married my great-grandfather. So I'm part Bengali, and many of generations of my family lived in Bengal. The Scots were very big in the East India Company, and my background is exactly the background of the sort of Scots who went to India, which is posh but poor. You never got the real tops, the lords, the ladies, the fancy pants, marquises and dukes never went out to India because they didn't have to. It was extremely risky business joining these. Most kids that went out didn't come back. It was that simple. 2/3 died in India. But the third that came back often came back with large sums of money. And so the Scots used to take the gamble and used to send the younger sons, or a younger son, out to India to make his fortune. And that's what my family did for generation after generation. And it was one of these who married the part Bengali girl. And so when you go to Calcutta today, you can find at the graveyard or the walls of St. John's Church or anywhere else, tons of Dalrymples everywhere. They had a very nice house, which sadly no longer exists, in Garden Reach opposite the Botanic Gardens. And I rather wish it was still there. Sounds a lot more lavish than my rented farm in Neruli.
Right. You've recently written the foreword for Fenton Cognac's book on the Cognacs, The Last of the Tattooed Headhunters. Which other budding Indian writers would you recommend for readers?
Oh God, there's so many. I mean, there's a wonderful generation of both fiction and non-fiction coming up. Of non-fiction, I mentioned two already. Ira Mukoti, who's just written a wonderful biography of Akbar,
And Manu
and
Pillai.
Manu Pillai, who wrote The Rebel
Yeah.
Sultan. Those are the two star players, I think, in non-fiction. In fiction, there are so many. Who to single out, who have I really enjoyed lately? Avni Doshi was this year's great sort of Girl in White Cotton. I think it's an extraordinary debut novel. But I mean, all the obvious ones: Arundhati, Amitav, Vikram, Kiran.
Yeah.
All those remain at the height of their powers. There's also, of course, a remarkable crop of novelists over the border. Ones that, like the cricket, can give the Indian team a run for their money. And this one, the fast bowlers are Mohsin Hamid, Daniel Moinuddin, and Kamala Shamsi. So,
yeah, I love Daniel Moinuddin.
I too. That's my favorite of all.
Yeah, he's just brilliant.
Absolutely.
Okay.
He's about to come out with his it's actually his first novel, the first book, short story. And it is not set in Pakistan, it's set in America. He's half American, and it's the American half of his life he's writing about. So it's a big, epic novel set in somewhere weird like Montana, Midwest. Totally different.
Right. So I have some fun questions for you now.
Okay.
Do you consider yourself a modern-day white Mughal?
In some ways. I mean, I'm married to a Scottish girl, and I don't have Anglo-Indian children, nor, tragically, do we have troops of dancing girls on the farm. But I certainly have done a bit. I mean, I'm sitting here wearing kurta pajamas as we speak. I eat Desi food. I watch Desi cinema and read Desi books. And of course, yeah, after 30 years here, I'm culturally part Indian, despite my white skin. Very irritatingly, I've got cousins whose genes from the Indian half are very clear. And my cousin Rupert, who died last year, when he came to India, everyone would speak to him in Hindi. But in that way that often happens with mixed race families, you have some kids that are very dark and some kids that are very light. I've got the blue eyes, and when I was young, I had completely blonde hair. I don't have any hair at all, but what I have is grey. But I mean, in a sense, I think it would have made things a bit easier if I'd had a bit of those genes, and I would have been seen perhaps more of an insider than an outsider. There was the writer to be kind of somewhere between that is quite a useful position. You're half in, half out, never quite part of, but always observing. And so as a writer, I think that position of being the outsider insider or the insider outsider, whichever way we look at it, is a useful.
Okay, so good fun. So rapid fire round, quick fun questions. So William, the writer or the photographer?
Definitely the writer. That's my job.
One thing you like the most and the least in Delhi?
The most? Oh, many things I love here, but just to say one quickly for a quick fire, maybe Al-Kawthar kebabs and Chanakia puri.
Okay. Right, so Al-Kawthar.
At the end of an evening on the town is...
not Kareem's.
Kareem's, I think, is slightly overrated, to be honest. I would love to love Kareem's, but I love that area around Kareem's. But there are better places to the old city, which I might not say because they are the secrets. But there are lots of good little places, hole-in-the-wall places that do wonderful halim or nihari.
Yeah. So do's for travelers while visiting India or Delhi?
Well, I think the first thing visiting India or Delhi is get your seasons right. The Delhi is gorgeous in February, March, and the first half of April. It's when there isn't a smog out, it's also rather lovely in October and November. But it is pretty tough at this time of year. I mean, it's okay if you've got air conditioning and the swimming pool, but it's otherwise obviously to be sitting in 45 degrees heat is no one's idea of fun.
Yeah.
Ditto the monsoon, which is the season I hate most. I know Indians. The one thing actually, I think there are three things that I've never become Indian about. One is trashy Bollywood. I just can't enjoy it. I mean, there's some Indian cinema I love, like Lunchbox or something, but quite a lot of trashy Bollywood I can't get at all. I really can't enjoy it. Second is some varieties of laddus. Too sweet for me. And there was a third one. I was going to say, I can't remember what it was. The rains. Sorry, the point of the story.
The rains, yeah.
I grew up in Scotland, and rains are a bad thing where I come from. And I can't, I mean, obviously when it's 45 degrees, it's lovely when there's a storm and it goes down to 30. But there's nothing I hate more than that period in September when it's cluggy. There are mosquitoes everywhere. If you turn on the light outside, suddenly every flying ant in India lands on your lamp and on your face. And I long for Diwali and Dussehra for it to stop.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's definitely not Indian. Indians love their monsoon. So,
and it's funny. It's a very profound divide that will never be breached. Will never be bridged. It means something. And then also equally the reverse, when an Indian steps out and sees a cloudy day, it's a lovely weather. While I look at the blue sky and say lovely weather.
Well, don'ts for travelers while visiting Delhi.
So Delhi is definitely, you know how in Apple Music they have sort of essential hits and then deeper cuts. Delhi, I think, is for travelers a deeper cut in that it is tough when you first arrive if you're fresh from Europe, particularly if it's hot and there's a lot of hassle and there's traffic jams. It's not, Rajasthan where everything is instantly gorgeous, but ultimately slightly boring. You've had a week of Rajputs telling you about Rajput Bala. Run back to Delhi quick. So it's a tough one, but if you have time to get to exploring around the back of Delhi, seeing the old city, seeing the ruins of Lodi Gardens, seeing Maroli Archaeological Park, it is a city of hidden treasures that you have to seek out. It's not Venice that instantly you fall in love with. But,
okay. A hidden gem, according to you, that most travelers give a miss while visiting Delhi?
Well, and I always think when you're talking about Delhi, you can include most of its inhabitants too, as they never explore their own city and are spectacularly ignorant. Maroli Archaeological Park is always the place I take visitors after they've been to the Qutub or been to the Red Fort, the really obvious things. I think it's a wonderful area, that. Or bits of the old city, the Zinatul Masjid in just behind the Red Fort, and a wonderful area there. Daryaganj.
Yeah. Daryaganj. So if you had one meal in Delhi, which dish would you recommend?
Depends on the season, but nihari, probably. Nihari for a vegetarian meal. I know. So, I mean, one of the great pleasures of Delhi is the street food, which I wouldn't perhaps recommend to a Farang coming in for the first time. But there are some fantastic kebab shops at the back of the Nizamuddin Shrine. There's a place with the odd name of Kit Care Kebabs that does a spectacular dahi butter chicken. There are places that do wonderful halim opposite at the end of the road where Kareem's is. There's so many places. Places like Andhra Bhavan if you're a vegetarian after a delicious thali. And so on. Yeah.
Okay, where would you go for a drink? Your favorite bar?
Bars are not one of Delhi's sort of shining qualities. I mean, there are other cities that do bars better than we do here. But I go often to Coast in Housegard's Village. I go very regularly to Olives in Maroli. I mean, it's a restaurant rather than the bar, but that's my default sort of a place to meet people. But my father said, of course, fine, no one can ever get there. So I often end up meeting people at Olives, which I love.
That's your local.
That's my local.
Right. So a favorite Indian festival and why?
Ooh, difficult. I mean, there are all sorts of weird festivals at the back end of Goa where the Catholics go and visit Hindu shrines, and then the Hindus come and visit the Catholic church the next day. Those things are very jolly, obscure festivals. But basically, you're talking big sort of poster festivals. I'm not a huge fan of Holi. I loved it when I first arrived, but middle age, it's less fun than it is when you're a kid of 20. What do I mean, Diwali is always fun. Lots of gambling, good parties.
Yeah. Okay, that one word in Hindi or Punjabi that every traveler should know while visiting Delhi.
Well, I think Delhi, Ben George, probably.
Oh, God.
They should know what's being shouted at them.
Don't expect me to translate that. All right. Right. So that was fun, William. It was.
Just thinking it's not a nice thing to have shouted at.
Yeah, it was great fun chatting with you. We have lots of questions, so I think we have time for just maybe one or two questions.
I don't
know.
I must disappear in 2 minutes, but please, a question or two would be lovely.
Yeah, you'll have to go in 2 minutes. So just one question we will take then. Oh God, there's so many questions. So your thoughts on the crumbling heritage of Old Delhi and your thoughts.
Well, it makes me terribly sad how bad this country is dealing with its amazing heritage. This city and this country is full of the most amazing monuments which are falling apart. The ASI hasn't got money or the resources to look after it. The museums are miserable. And while it's very nice to go to somewhere out in the boonies of Madhya Pradesh and find a world-class monument that no one's ever visits, that is grassed over, like sort of Udayagiri or Sanchi or something, has no tourist infrastructure, but is the sort of monument that anywhere else in the world would be a world-class World Heritage Site. While that's very nice, it does make me weep. With Zafar Mahal, my local palace, every month another balustrade disappears, a jali stolen, something's fallen down, and the ASI does nothing to look after it. I mean, it's not, in a sense, it's not entirely the ASI's fault. They are, they've got no resources. But I think India is shooting itself in the foot because India can be and should be one of the great tourist destinations of the world. Currently, however, it gets less visitors than Singapore, which is bonkers. Yeah. And it would not take much investment to turn India from what is still, frankly, a peripheral destination on the world tourist scene to a place that is can look Italy or France. I mean, Italy, whatever it is, 30% of the economy is linked to tourist trade. India could do that. If it looks after its monuments, builds its museums. I mean, China has invested millions in museums, having destroyed half its heritage and cultural revolution. It's been haunting the auction rooms of Britain and America for the last 20 years, buying up stuff. And now when you go to Shanghai, there are these amazing museums where there was nothing 10 years ago. India needs to do that. And India needs to realize that a little bit of investment in tourism can pay incredible dividends in terms of income, frankly. I mean, Rajasthan, for example, has done it. Rajasthan has turned all those crumbling palaces into gorgeous boutique hotels. And as a result, all those Rajputs are driving around in smart SUVs now and making lots of money. And Goa's begun the same thing, so has Kerala. But the whole rest of India, frankly, is peripheral to the world tourist scene. So the whole of Karnataka with amazing ruins like Hampi and so on. And still, Hampi, there's barely a good hotel, and yet it's one of the most incredible ruins in the world.
Yeah. Comparable to
a very simple thing for any government to do, to really invest in heritage and tourism, and you could create a massive tourist boom.
You're right, William. I think you're
the government.
Your 2 minutes are over, so I take this opportunity.
Thank you so much. I had a
Thank
tragedy
you
in the
so
house
much for
today.
joining us.
Our family dog died today, so I've got to go and look after the children.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and stay safe. Sorry, we couldn't
Thank
take
you.
up all the questions. We have a lot of questions, but William, the time is limited. So thank you so much for joining us.
Great pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much.
Likewise. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.